It started like any other Saturday. The sun was shining outside, and I had just pulled into my in-laws' driveway for my wife's birthday party. Their house always smelled faintly of pine cleaner mixed with baked goods. Something about it made me feel both welcome and out of place at the same time. But today wasn't about me. It was about her. My wife, Sarah. The whole family was there. Her parents, her sister, even her loud-mouthed uncle who never missed an opportunity to remind me how lucky I was to marry into this family. It was all smiles and laughter, the kind of day that felt normal, almost perfect. Our 4-year-old daughter, Lily, was running around the backyard chasing butterflies while Sarah laughed from the porch, sipping lemonade. And then my phone rang. I stepped inside to answer it, figuring it would be one of those quick calls from work, a question about Monday's meeting or some forgotten detail nobody else could figure out. Instead, when I saw my dad's name flash across the screen, I froze. Dad doesn't call unless it's important. He's not big on small talk. Where are you now? His voice came through sharp and urgent, cutting straight to the point. I'm at my in-laws. The whole family is here, I said, glancing toward the living room window where I could see Sarah laughing again. Something about the way she threw her head back when she laughed still caught me off guard sometimes, like she was more alive than anyone else in the room. Listen, he interrupted, his tone shifting darker. Take your daughter and get out now. What? Why? I asked, confused. This didn't make sense. Nothing bad ever happened here. Just do it now. Don't ask questions. His voice cracked slightly, something I'd never heard before. My dad was a rock. He didn't crack. Whatever this was, it was serious. My heart pounded as I hung up without another word. Panic clawed its way up my throat, but I forced myself to stay calm. I found Lily chasing Bubbles by the fence and scooped her up mid-giggle. She squealed, thinking it was part of the game. Daddy, put me down. I wanna play. Not right now, sweetheart, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. We have to go home. Sarah noticed us heading toward the car and called after me, irritation creeping into her tone. What are you doing? We are in the middle of my party. I'll explain later, I muttered, avoiding eye contact. I buckled Lily into her car seat, my hand shaking so badly I nearly dropped the strap. By the time I climbed behind the wheel, everyone had gathered near the driveway, staring at me like I'd lost my mind. You can't just leave. Sarah shouted, storming over to the driver's side. This is ridiculous. But I didn't respond. I couldn't. All I could think about was my dad's voice, the urgency, the fear, and whatever it was that had him scared enough to demand I leave everything behind without explanation. As I sped away, I glanced in the rearview mirror. Sarah stood there, arms crossed, glaring after us. Her sister whispered something in her ear, and they both turned to look at the house. That's when I noticed it, the curtains in the upstairs guest bedroom shifting, even though no one should have been up there. A chill ran down my spine. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Dad. Turn on the news. I did, fumbling with the radio until I found a local station. The anchor's voice filled the car, tense and breathless. Breaking news. Police are currently investigating reports of a potential security threat involving high-profile individuals connected to international espionage. Authorities advise residents in the affected area to evacuate immediately. My stomach dropped. Espionage? This wasn't possible. My in-laws were regular people, teachers, accountants, nothing remotely suspicious about them. And yet, the pieces clicked together in my head. The strange men who occasionally visited the house. The hushed conversations that stopped whenever I entered the room. The way Sarah always seemed overly interested in my job details, even though we worked in completely different fields. By the time we reached our neighborhood, helicopters hovered overhead, their blades chopping through the quiet afternoon air. News vans lined the streets leading back to my in-laws' house. Police cars blocked the entrance, lights flashing silently. I parked the car and turned to Lily, who was blissfully unaware of what was happening. Her tiny hand reached up to touch my face. Why are we home, Daddy? I forced a smile, though my insides felt hollow. Because we are safe here, baby. That's all that matters. But as I stared out the window at the chaos unfolding miles away, I couldn't shake the image of Sarah standing in the driveway, watching us drive off. Had she known? Was she involved? Or was she just another pawn in whatever twisted game my in-laws were playing? One thing was certain, Nothing would ever be the same again. The days that followed were a blur of news reports, unanswered questions, and sleepless nights. Every time I turned on the TV or opened my phone, there was another update about the security threat at my in-laws' house. Authorities had raided the property, confiscating computers, files, and even furniture. Neighbors were interviewed, their faces blurred for privacy, but I could hear the shock in their voices. Never would have guessed they were involved in something like this, one neighbor said. They seemed so normal. Normal. That word stuck with me. It felt like a cruel joke now. How much of Sarah's life, our life together, had been a lie? And what did it mean for Lily, our daughter? She didn't deserve to be caught up in any of this. Dad refused to tell me how he'd known to call me that day, only saying, "Sometimes, you protect your family without asking why." His words haunted me. Was he involved somehow? Or had he stumbled onto information too dangerous to ignore? Lily adjusted surprisingly well to our new routine. We stayed at Dad's house for a while, hiding out in his quiet suburban neighborhood far from the chaos. He kept her entertained with puzzles and stories, doing everything he could to shield her from the storm brewing around us. But me. I couldn't stop thinking about Sarah. I tried calling her dozens of times, but her number went straight to voicemail. Finally, late one night, she answered. "Mark." Her voice was soft, almost fragile. Not the confident, carefree woman I thought I knew. "Sarah, what's going on?" I asked, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. "Tell me the truth." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "I don't know where to start." "Start with why," I said, my voice cracking. "Why didn't you tell me?" She sighed heavily, as if carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. "It wasn't supposed to touch you. You and Lily, you weren't supposed to get hurt." "That's not an answer," I snapped, pacing the length of Dad's living room. "Were you working for them? Spying? What?" "No," she insisted, her tone sharp enough to cut through my anger. "But my family, they're not who you think they are. They've been involved in things for years, things I didn't understand until recently. When they found out I married you, they saw an opportunity. Someone stable, someone trustworthy. So I was just a cover." I interrupted, feeling sick to my stomach. "Is that what you're saying?" "No," she cried. "You have to believe me, Mark. I love you. I love Lily. None of this was supposed to happen. But when I realized what they were planning, I couldn't stop it. And then, after today," her voice trailed off into silence. "After today." Those 3 words sent a shiver down my spine. Something big had happened, something that changed everything. "What do you mean, after today?" I demanded. "They're gone," she whispered. "Mom, Dad, everyone. The police showed up, and they disappeared. No arrests, no explanations. Just gone." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Gone. How could an entire family vanish into thin air? Unless they weren't just ordinary criminals. Unless they really were connected to something bigger, something international, like the news report suggested. "I don't know what to do," Sarah admitted, her voice breaking. "I don't know who to trust anymore." For a moment, I considered telling her to come to us, to bring her back to safety. But something stopped me. Could I trust her? Had she been lying to me all along, or was she truly innocent in all of this? "I need time," I said finally, my voice hollow. "We both do." She didn't argue. Instead, she simply said, "Be careful, Mark. Please. For Lily's sake." And then the line went dead. The next morning, Dad handed me a newspaper over breakfast. The headline screamed, "International Spy Ring Dismantled. Key Figures Still at Large." Beneath it was a grainy photo of Sarah's parents, their faces circled in red ink. According to the article, they were high-ranking members of a covert organization linked to several global incidents over the past decade. "You need to make a choice, son," Dad said, his expression grim. "This isn't just about you and Sarah anymore. It's about protecting Lily. If you let Sarah back into your lives, you're putting her in danger, and yourself too." His words echoed in my mind long after he left the room. Protecting Lily. That was the only thing that mattered now. But how could I shield her from a world that suddenly felt so unstable, so unpredictable? Later that afternoon, I sat with Lily in the backyard, watching her chase butterflies just like she had at her birthday party. She looked up at me, her bright eyes full of innocence. "Will Mommy come back soon?" she asked. I hesitated, unsure of how to answer. "I hope so, sweetheart. I really do." But deep down, I wasn't sure I wanted her to. Sarah might have loved us, but love wasn't enough to undo the damage her family had caused. Love couldn't erase the lies, the secrets, the betrayal. As the sun set behind the trees, I made a silent promise to myself. No matter what happened next, I would do whatever it took to keep Lily safe, even if it meant leaving the past behind, for good. Weeks turned into months, and life settled into a fragile kind of normalcy. Lily adapted quickly to our new routine at Dad's house, her laughter filling the quiet rooms like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. But for me, the weight of unanswered questions lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. Sarah hadn't reached out again after that phone call, and I hadn't tried to contact her either. It wasn't easy. Part of me still wanted answers, closure, something to make sense of the chaos. But every time I thought about picking up the phone or sending a message, I pictured Lily's face and remembered my promise, to protect her above all else. Dad helped as much as he could, but even he seemed uneasy. He spent hours on the phone with people whose names he never mentioned, and late at night, I'd catch him staring at old photos of Mom, his brow furrowed in thought. Whatever secrets he carried, they weren't leaving him anytime soon. Then one day, everything changed. It started with a knock at the door, a sharp, insistent sound that sent a jolt of panic through me. Lily was napping upstairs, and Dad was out running errands, so I answered it cautiously. Standing on the porch was a man in a dark suit, his expression unreadable. "Mr. Thompson?" he asked, flashing a badge too quickly for me to process. "I'm Agent Harris with the FBI. May I come in?" The room tilted slightly as my heart raced. The FBI. What did they want with us? "Of course," I said, stepping aside. My voice sounded calm, but inside, I was anything but. Agent Harris entered and took a seat at the dining table, his movements precise and deliberate. He opened a folder and slid a photo across the table toward me. It was Sarah, or at least, someone who looked like her. Her hair was shorter, her eyes harder, but there was no mistaking her face. "We believe your wife may be involved in ongoing activities related to the organization we dismantled several months ago," he explained, his tone clinical. "We need your cooperation to locate her." My stomach churned. "I haven't seen or spoken to her since the raid," I stammered. "She called once, but that was it." He nodded, unfazed. "We are aware of that call, but based on recent intelligence, we suspect she's attempting to reconnect with you, and possibly your daughter." Lily. The mention of her name made my blood run cold. Why would she do that? She knows how dangerous this is. "That's exactly why we are concerned," Agent Harris replied. "If she's desperate enough to reach out, she may not be acting alone. And if her former associates discover where you are..." He let the sentence hang, but I didn't need him to finish it. I already knew what was at stake. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while Lily slept peacefully in the next room. The agent's words replayed in my mind over and over again. Was Sarah really trying to find us? Or worse, had someone else found her first? Just as sleep began to pull me under, a faint noise outside caught my attention. A car engine, maybe? I crept to the window and peeked through the blinds. At first, I saw nothing, but then, movement. A figure darted between the trees at the edge of the yard, just visible in the moonlight. My pulse quickened. Grabbing my phone, I dialed 911, keeping my voice low as I reported suspicious activity near the house. Then I quietly woke Dad, who returned home shortly after Agent Harris left. Together, we checked every lock and window, arming ourselves with whatever makeshift weapons we could find. But deep down, I knew it wasn't enough. If someone was out there watching us, hiding behind shadows, we were sitting ducks. By morning, the police had arrived, scouring the area for signs of intrusion. They found tire tracks leading away from the property but no other evidence. Still, Agent Harris insisted we relocate immediately, for our safety. "Where will we go?" I asked, feeling helpless as Lily clung to my leg, sensing the tension in the air. "We'll arrange temporary housing under protective custody," he assured me, "until we can determine whether the threat has passed." Temporary housing. Protective custody. The phrases felt foreign, Surreal. This wasn't the life I'd imagined for myself or my daughter. But what choice did I have? As we packed our belongings, I couldn't help but think about Sarah. Had she sent whoever was watching us? Or was she trying to warn me, to protect us in her own way? Either way, I couldn't afford to trust her, not when Lily's life depended on it. The safe house was small but secure, tucked away in a remote part of the state. 4 weeks, we lived in isolation, monitored by agents who came and went without explanation. It was lonely, suffocating even, but at least we were safe. One evening, as Lily played with her dolls on the floor, I received a text from an unknown number. My hands trembled as I opened it. "Mark, please listen. I'm sorry for everything. Please keep Lily safe. They're coming for her." The message ended with a location, a nearby park, and a time, midnight. My breath hitched. Was this a trap? Or was Sarah finally telling me the truth? I stared at the screen, torn between fear and hope. Whatever decision I made, it would change everything. And I knew, deep down, that running wasn't an option anymore. The clock ticked relentlessly as midnight approached. Each second felt like an eternity, stretching thin the fragile resolve I'd managed to piece together since receiving Sarah's text. The words echoed in my mind. They're coming for her. Who were they? And why would anyone target Lily? She was just a child, an innocent caught in a web spun by people far more dangerous than I ever imagined. I sat alone in the dimly lit safe house, staring at the crumpled note I'd scribbled after reading Sarah's message. Dad had taken Lily to another room to keep her distracted, though I could hear her occasional giggles through the wall. Her laughter should have been comforting, but instead, it only deepened the ache in my chest. How could I protect her when I didn't even know who, or what, we were up against? Agent Harris arrived shortly before 11, his sharp eyes scanning the room as if searching for something hidden in plain sight. He'd insisted on accompanying me to the park, claiming it was too risky to go alone. Part of me wanted to argue. I didn't trust him any more than I trusted Sarah, but reason won out. If this meeting went sideways, I'd need backup. For Lily's sake. "We'll observe from a distance," he said firmly as we stepped into the car. "If she tries anything suspicious, we move immediately." I nodded, though my stomach churned with unease. What if Sarah wasn't acting alone? What if this entire thing was a setup, a way to draw us out of hiding? The park was eerily quiet under the pale glow of the streetlights. Empty swings swayed gently in the breeze, their rhythmic creaking the only sound breaking the silence. Agent Harris parked a block away and handed me a small earpiece. "Stay close," he instructed. "And don't engage unless absolutely necessary." I slipped the device into my ear and stepped out of the car, my heart pounding so loudly I was sure he could hear it. The cool night air bit at my skin as I walked toward the designated spot, a bench near the playground where Lily loved to play during happier times. At exactly midnight, a figure emerged from the shadows. My breath caught in my throat. It was Sarah. She looked different, thinner, paler, her once vibrant eyes now hollow and haunted. But there was no mistaking the desperation etched across her face as she approached me. "Mark," her voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "Thank God you came." Before I could respond, Agent Harris's voice crackled in my earpiece. "Do not let her get closer. Repeat, do not let her get closer." But I ignored him. This was Sarah, the woman I'd loved, the mother of my child. Whatever mistakes she'd made, whatever secrets she carried, they didn't erase the years we'd shared or the life we'd built together. "What's going on, Sarah?" I asked, keeping my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Who's coming for Lily?" She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. My family, they weren't just working for themselves. They were part of something bigger. Something global. When they disappeared, they left behind loose ends, including me. Her words sent a chill down my spine. What does that mean? Why are they targeting Lily? "They want leverage," she admitted, tears streaming down her face. "A bargaining chip. If they can't control me directly, they'll use her against me. Against all of us." I shook my head, struggling to process what she was saying. "You should have told me sooner. You should have trusted me." "I couldn't," she cried, her voice breaking. "Every time I tried, I put you both in more danger. But I can't run anymore, Mark. I won't let them hurt her." Before I could respond, Headlights pierced the darkness, illuminating the park in harsh white light. A black SUV screeched to a halt nearby, and several men in tactical gear spilled out, weapons drawn. "Get down!" Agent Harris shouted, sprinting toward us from his hiding spot. Sarah grabbed my arm, her grip surprisingly strong. "Take Lily and run. Don't stop. Don't look back." "No," I protested, pulling her closer. "We are not leaving without you." "Yes, you are," she said fiercely, shoving me away. "This is the only way to keep her safe. Please, Mark. Trust me one last time." Her plea hit me like a punch to the gut. Before I could react, she turned and ran straight toward the armed men, shouting something in a language I didn't understand. Gunfire erupted, echoing through the empty park like thunder. "Move!" Agent Harris barked, dragging me behind a tree as bullets whizzed past. I wanted to fight back, to scream, to do something, but my legs refused to obey. All I could do was watch helplessly as Sarah disappeared into the chaos, her silhouette fading into the night. Hours later, back at the safe house, I sat numbly on the couch while Dad paced the room, muttering under his breath about how reckless I'd been. Lily slept soundlessly upstairs, blissfully unaware of the nightmare unfolding around her. Agent Harris eventually returned, his expression grim. "Your wife, she's gone," he said bluntly. "We lost her in the firefight. Whoever those men were, they weren't amateurs." His words barely registered. Gone. Just like that. After everything we'd been through, everything we'd fought for, Sarah had sacrificed herself to give us a chance to escape. And now, it was up to me to honor that sacrifice. In the days that followed, we relocated again, this time to a new city, a new identity. It wasn't easy starting over, but it was necessary. For Lily's sake, I vowed to leave the past behind and focus on building a future where she could grow up safe, loved, and free from fear. But late at night, when the house was quiet and the world felt impossibly vast, I couldn't help but wonder, had Sarah truly been working to protect us, or had she been playing us all along? And if she was really gone, why did it feel like her absence left an even bigger hole in our lives than before? One thing was certain, the truth about Sarah, and the shadowy forces that pursued her, would haunt me forever. But for now, all that mattered was keeping Lily safe. That was the promise I intended to keep, no matter the cost. Months passed in our new life under assumed identities. The days blurred together, a monotonous rhythm of work, school drop-offs for Lily, and quiet evenings spent trying not to think about the past. But no matter how hard I tried to focus on the present, the ghosts of what happened refused to stay buried. Lily adjusted remarkably well to our new reality. She thrived in her new school, making friends easily and laughing with a carefree joy that reminded me of happier times. Watching her smile was both a blessing and a curse. It filled me with pride but also guilt. How could I explain to her why we had to leave everything behind? Why Mommy wasn't coming back? I couldn't. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But late at night, when the house was silent and the weight of my secrets pressed down on me like a suffocating blanket, I found myself staring at old photos of Sarah. Her smile seemed so genuine, so alive. Was it all an act? Or had she truly loved us despite the lies? Agent Harris checked in occasionally, updating me on the ongoing investigation into Sarah's disappearance and the shadowy organization tied to her family. Each report brought more questions than answers. No bodies were recovered from the firefight at the park. No arrests were made. Whoever those men were, they vanished as quickly as they appeared. "They're still out there," Harris said during one of his visits, his tone grim. "And until we know who, or what, we are dealing with, you need to remain vigilant." Vigilant. It was a word I'd come to hate. Being vigilant meant living in constant fear, always looking over my shoulder, never letting my guard down, not even for a moment. For Lily's sake, I endured it. But some nights, I wondered if this was really living or just surviving. Then, one ordinary Tuesday morning, something extraordinary happened. I was dropping Lily off at school when a man approached me near the entrance. He looked unremarkable, average height, average build, wearing a plain grey hoodie, but his eyes gave him away. They were sharp, calculating, and eerily familiar. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice low but steady. "We need to talk." Every instinct screamed at me to run, to grab Lily and get as far away as possible. But before I could react, he held up a photo. It was of Sarah, alive, smiling faintly, though her expression was guarded. "She's alive," he said simply. And she wants to see you. My heart stopped. Alive? After all this time? Part of me wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, to dismiss him as a lunatic or a con artist. But the photo, it looked real. Too real. What do you want? I demanded, keeping my voice low so Lily wouldn't overhear. Why should I believe you? He leaned in closer, his breath warm against my ear. Because if you don't, your daughter will never be safe. You know that better than anyone. The threat hung in the air between us, heavy and undeniable. I glanced at Lily, who was chatting animatedly with her teacher, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. Could I risk meeting him? Could I afford not to? Where? I asked finally, my voice barely above a whisper. Follow me, he said, turning toward a nondescript van parked nearby. Alone. The ride was tense, every mile stretching longer than the last. The man didn't speak, and neither did I. My mind raced with possibilities, most of them bad. Was this a trap? Had Sarah set me up after all? Or was she truly reaching out, desperate to reconnect? We arrived at an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. The place smelled of mildew and decay, its walls covered in graffiti and broken windows. It was the kind of setting horror movies were made of, and for a moment I considered bolting. But then I saw her. Sarah stood in the center of the room, her arms wrapped tightly around herself as if bracing against the cold. She looked thinner than before, her face pale and drawn, but her eyes, those piercing blue eyes, were full of emotion. Relief, fear, guilt, love, it was all there, swirling together in a chaotic storm. Mark, she whispered, taking a tentative step forward. I'm so sorry. Before I could respond, two figures emerged from the shadows behind her. One was the man who'd brought me here. The other was older, his hair streaked with grey, his posture commanding. He introduced himself as Victor, though I suspected it wasn't his real name. We don't have much time, Victor said, cutting straight to the point. Your wife has information critical to dismantling the network responsible for everything you've endured. But she can't do it alone. And why should I trust you? I shot back, my anger boiling over. You've already proven you can't be trusted. Victor didn't flinch. Because if you don't, they'll come for your daughter. And next time, we won't be able to stop them. His words hit like a punch to the gut. Images of Lily flashed through my mind. Her laughter, her curiosity, her innocence. If there was even a chance of keeping her safe, I had to take it. What do you need me to do? I asked, my voice trembling with equal parts fear and determination. Sarah stepped closer, her hand brushing mine. Just trust me, Mark. Please. One last time. Her touch sent a jolt through me, reigniting feelings I thought I'd buried long ago. Love, betrayal, hope, despair. It was all tangled together, impossible to untangle. Victor handed me a folder filled with documents, maps, and instructions. This is everything you'll need. Follow the plan exactly as written. Any deviation could mean disaster. I nodded, clutching the folder like a lifeline. Whatever lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. Protecting Lily was worth any price, even if it meant risking everything once again. As we parted ways, Sarah pulled me aside, her voice barely audible. If anything happens to me, promise me you'll keep her safe. I promise, I said, my throat tight with emotion. But nothing's going to happen to you. We are getting out of this, together. Her lips curved into a faint smile, though her eyes remained haunted. I hope you're right. Back at home, I stared at the folder, dread pooling in my stomach. Whatever was inside would change everything, for better or worse. And as I flipped open the first page, I realized the hardest part was only beginning. Because the truth about Sarah, and the organization she was entangled with, was darker than I ever imagined. The folder Victor had given me was a Pandora's box of secrets, maps marked with cryptic symbols, dossiers on shadowy figures whose names I didn't recognize, and instructions written in clipped, urgent language. Each page peeled back another layer of the nightmare Sarah's family had dragged us into. But one detail stood out above all others, a name circled in red ink at the top of a document labeled Priority Target. It was my father's name. My hands froze mid-flip as the room seemed to tilt around me. Dad. How could he possibly be involved in this mess? He'd been nothing but supportive since the day everything unraveled, the rock I leaned on when I thought I couldn't stand anymore. The man who'd risked his own safety to protect Lily and me. But now I wasn't so sure. I stared at the name, willing it to make sense, to reveal itself as some kind of mistake. Maybe they had the wrong person. Or maybe Dad had unknowingly crossed paths with these people during his years of service, or whatever secrets he refused to share about his past. Or maybe he'd known all along. The thought hit me like a freight train, leaving me breathless and nauseous. No, it couldn't be true. Could it? Before I could process what I'd read, the sound of footsteps outside snapped me out of my daze. Someone was approaching the house, deliberate, measured steps that didn't belong to Dad or anyone else I expected. My heart pounded as I slid the folder under the couch cushion and crept toward the window. Through the blinds, I saw two men dressed in dark suits walking up the driveway. Their faces were grim, their movements precise. One of them carried a briefcase, the other held a weapon holstered at his side. They weren't cops, they were professionals. Mercenaries, maybe. Or worse. Mark. Lily's voice called from upstairs, her tiny feet padding across the floor. She must have woken up from her nap. Panic surged through me. If they found us here, if they realized I had the folder, I didn't want to think about what would happen next. Grabbing my phone, I sent a quick text to Dad. Get home now. We are in trouble. Then I turned off the lights and hid behind the living room door, gripping a baseball, but I kept near the entryway. Whatever was coming, I had to buy us time. When the knock came, it was firm and authoritative. Mr. Thompson, one of them called. We need to speak with you. No answer. I held my breath, praying Lily wouldn't wander downstairs. The silence stretched taut until finally, the front door creaked open. The intruders stepped inside, their shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. We know you're here, the taller one said, his voice dripping with menace. Come quietly, and no one gets hurt. Fat chance. I swung the bat with every ounce of strength I had, catching the first man squarely in the jaw. He stumbled backward, cursing, as the second raised his weapon. A shot rang out, shattering the coffee table beside me. Daddy! Lily screamed from upstairs, her voice piercing through the chaos. Stay where you are, sweetheart. I shouted back, adrenaline fueling my movements. I lunged at the second man, tackling him to the ground before he could fire again. We grappled for control of the gun, each blow landing harder than the last. Just as I managed to wrench it free, a third figure appeared in the doorway. Enough. The command stopped us both cold. Standing there, silhouetted against the fading sunlight, was Dad. His expression was unreadable, his presence commanding. Behind him stood Sarah, her face pale but resolute. What the hell is going on? I demanded, scrambling to my feet. Why are you here? Dad sighed heavily, running a hand through his graying hair. Because I made a promise, to keep you safe. Even if it meant keeping things from you. Keeping what from me? I snapped, gesturing wildly at the wreckage around us. Who are these guys? And why does that folder have your name in it? For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Sarah stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. Your dad isn't who you think he is, Mark. He's not just retired military. He's part of the same organization my family worked for. The words hit like a sledgehammer, knocking the air from my lungs. I looked at Dad, searching his face for any sign of denial. Instead, I found only guilt. It's true, he admitted finally, his shoulders sagging under the weight of the confession. I joined decades ago, long before I met your mother. When Sarah's family disappeared, I tried to distance myself, to protect you and Lily. But old ties run deep. They came after me, and I couldn't let them find you. So you lied to me, I said, my voice shaking with anger. All this time, you knew about them, you knew about her, and you never said a word. I did it to keep you safe, he shot back, his tone sharp enough to cut steel. Do you think I wanted this life for you? For Lily? I gave up everything to shield you from the darkness I helped create. His words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, Agent Harris's team, arriving too late to stop whatever was unfolding. Sarah stepped between us, her eyes pleading. This isn't helping anyone. We need to focus on what matters, stopping them. Once and for all. She handed me a flash drive she'd been clutching tightly. Everything we need is on here, the identities of key players, their plans, everything. But we have to move fast. They already know we are onto them. I stared at the drive, my mind racing. Trusting Sarah again felt like stepping off a cliff without knowing if there was solid ground below. But trusting Dad, that might be even harder. Still, I nodded. What's the plan? Sarah exchanged a glance with Dad, then turned back to me. We take the fight to them. Expose the truth. Destroy the network from within. And if it doesn't work? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Her answer was simple, yet devastating. Then none of us will make it out alive. As we prepared to leave, one thing became painfully clear. The line between allies and enemies had blurred beyond recognition. And in this war, survival might come at a cost none of us were ready to pay. The plan was simple in theory but impossibly dangerous in execution. Infiltrate the organization's central hub, a heavily guarded compound hidden deep in the mountains, and upload the contents of Sarah's flash drive to a secure server accessible only by international law enforcement agencies. If successful, it would dismantle the network from within, exposing the identities of its leaders and crippling their operations. But simple didn't mean easy. Every step carried the risk of discovery, betrayal, or worse. And as we drove toward the rendezvous point where Victor and his team waited, I couldn't shake the feeling that this mission wasn't just about stopping them. It was also about confronting the truth, no matter how painful. Dad sat beside me in the passenger seat, his jaw clenched tight. He hadn't spoken much since his confession, and when he did, his words were clipped and strained. The weight of his secrets hung between us like an invisible wall, one neither of us knew how to tear down. You don't have to do this, I said finally, breaking the silence. You've already risked enough. He glanced at me, his eyes heavy with regret. This isn't about redemption, Mark. It's about making sure you and Lily get the life you deserve, a life free from fear. If that means putting myself in harm's way, so be it. His words should have brought comfort, but instead, they only deepened my unease. What if something went wrong? What if we lost him too? Behind us, Sarah sat with Lily, distracting her with stories and games to keep her calm. Watching them together through the rearview mirror filled me with conflicting emotions. Love, anger, gratitude, mistrust, it was all there, tangled into a knot I couldn't untie. When we reached the rendezvous point, a secluded clearing surrounded by dense forest, Victor and his team were waiting. They loaded us into a black van, its windows tinted to obscure our view. As we sped toward the compound, Sarah leaned forward, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. There's something you need to know, she said, her eyes flickering nervously between me and Dad. About the facility. What is it? I asked, dread pooling in my stomach. She hesitated before answering. It's not just a data center. It's a lab. They're experimenting on people. Testing new technologies, mind control, neural implants, things most people can't even imagine. Her revelation sent a chill down my spine. How far had this organization gone? And what kind of monsters were we dealing with? By the time we arrived at the compound, night had fallen, cloaking the mountainous terrain in shadows. The facility loomed ahead of us, its sleek exterior illuminated by harsh floodlights. Guards patrolled the perimeter, their weapons glinting under the artificial glow. This is it, Victor said, turning to face us. Once we breach the gate, there's no turning back. Stick to the plan, and stay close. We split into two teams. Victor led the first group, tasked with creating a diversion to draw the guards away from the main entrance. Dad, Sarah, and I formed the second team, responsible for accessing the server room and uploading the data. Lily stayed behind with one of Victor's trusted operatives, hidden in a nearby cave until it was safe to retrieve her. As we moved through the darkness, every sound seemed amplified. The crunch of gravel beneath our boots, the distant bark of a dog, the occasional crackle of a radio. My heart pounded in time with each step, adrenaline coursing through my veins. When we reached the service entrance, Sarah used a stolen keycard to unlock the door. Inside, the air was cold and sterile, the walls lined with flickering fluorescent lights. We followed the map on the folder, navigating narrow corridors and avoiding security cameras. But just as we reached the server room, everything went wrong. A loud alarm blared overhead, red lights flashing as automatic locks sealed the doors. Before we could react, armed guards flooded the hallway, shouting orders in a language I didn't understand. Go! Dad yelled, shoving me and Sarah inside the server room before barricading the door behind us. Gunfire erupted outside, the sharp cracks echoing off the metal walls. Sarah frantically inserted the flash drive into the terminal, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "Almost there," she muttered, sweat beading on her forehead. I turned to Dad, who stood with his back against the door, bracing himself against the pounding fists of the guards. "We are out of time." "I'll hold them off," he said firmly, pulling a handgun from his belt. "Finish the upload. Get out of here." "No," I protested, grabbing his arm. "We stick together. That's the deal." His expression softened, though his resolve remained unshaken. Sometimes, protecting the ones you love means letting go. Don't make the same mistakes I did, son. Before I could argue further, the door burst open, and chaos erupted. Dad fired blindly into the crowd, buying us precious seconds. Sarah shouted, "It's done," as the final file uploaded to the server. "Now, run," Dad commanded, pushing us toward the emergency exit. Tears blurred my vision as I hesitated, torn between obeying his order and staying by his side. But Sarah grabbed my hand, forcing me to move. "We have to go. For Lily." Reluctantly, I followed her, glancing back one last time. Dad stood alone, his silhouette framed by the chaos behind him. Then the door slammed shut, cutting him off from view. Outside, Victor and his team awaited us, blooded but alive. Together, we fought our way back to the rendezvous point, where Lily waited anxiously. When she saw me, she ran into my arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "It's okay, sweetheart," I whispered, holding her tightly. "We are safe now." But even as I said the words, I knew they weren't entirely true. The battle might have been over, but the war was far from won. And somewhere in the depths of that compound, my father had made the ultimate sacrifice. For me, for Lily, for all of us. The drive back to safety was a blur of headlights and silence. Lily slept fitfully in the backseat, her small hand clutching mine as if afraid I might disappear too. Sarah sat beside me, her face pale and drawn, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. Every now and then, she'd glance at me, her lips parting as if to say something, but no words came. I couldn't blame her. There were no words that could make this right, no way to undo what had happened. Dad's sacrifice weighed heavily on all of us, but especially on me. How could I reconcile the man who raised me with the soldier he'd been? How could I honor his memory without letting grief consume me? When we finally reached the safe house, a remote cabin nestled deep in the woods, I carried Lily inside and tucked her into bed. Her breathing steadied almost immediately, exhaustion overtaking fear. Watching her sleep brought a strange sense of peace, a reminder of why we'd fought so hard to survive. But peace was fleeting. Sarah joined me in the living room, where I stared blankly at the crackling fire. She hesitated for a moment before sitting across from me, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "Mark," she began, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry about your dad." I nodded stiffly, unable to meet her gaze. He did what he thought was right, what he believed would protect us. "He loved you," she said softly. "And Lily. More than anything." Her words stung, not because they weren't true, but because they reminded me of how much I still didn't know about him. About her. About any of it. "Did you know?" I asked suddenly, my voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet. About him. About what he really was. She shook her head, her eyes filling with tears. "No. Not until tonight. When Victor told me." I didn't want to believe it. Part of me wanted to lash out, to accuse her of lying, of keeping secrets just like everyone else in my life. But looking at her now, broken and vulnerable, I couldn't bring myself to do it. She'd lost everything too, her family, her freedom, maybe even her identity. So what happens now? I asked instead, my tone softer. "They'll come after us again. You know that." "They won't," she replied firmly, wiping away her tears. The data we uploaded, it wasn't just evidence. It was a kill switch. A way to shut down their entire operation. By morning, every major intelligence agency in the world will be hunting them. They won't have time to chase us. Her explanation should have brought relief, but instead, it only deepened my unease. Kill switches, mind control experiments, global networks of corruption. It was all too much to process. How could we ever go back to normal after this? Did we even deserve to? As dawn broke over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink, I stepped outside to clear my head. The air was crisp and cold, carrying the scent of pine and earth. For the first time in months, it felt like I could breathe. But the calm was short-lived. A car approached from the distance, its engine growling louder as it neared the cabin. My heart raced as I grabbed a nearby rifle, ready to defend what little we had left. To my surprise, however, the vehicle wasn't filled with armed agents or mercenaries. It was Agent Harris, accompanied by 2 other men in suits. "Mr. Thompson," Harris said as he stepped out of the car, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk." "What do you want?" I demanded, my grip tightening on the rifle. "Haven't we done enough for you?" He held up his hands in surrender. "You've done more than anyone could have asked. Thanks to the information you provided, we've dismantled key cells of the organization worldwide. But there's something you need to see." Something in his tone made me hesitate. Slowly, I lowered the weapon and followed him to the car. One of the men handed me a tablet, its screen displaying a video feed. At first, I didn't recognize the figure sitting in the dimly lit room, but then he looked directly into the camera, and my knees nearly buckled. It was Dad. Alive. They captured him during the raid, Harris explained. But not before he managed to destroy critical infrastructure within the compound. His actions saved countless lives, including yours. My hand shook as I watched the footage, tears streaming down my face. He looked battered and bruised, but alive. Alive. Where is he? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "We are negotiating his release," Harris replied. "But it won't be easy. They're using him as leverage." Leverage. The word sent a fresh wave of anger coursing through me. Hadn't he sacrificed enough already? "I'll do whatever it takes," I said firmly. "Whatever it costs." Harris nodded, his expression grim. "Just remember, this isn't over yet. Not for any of us." Later that day, as I sat with Lily and Sarah, watching the flames dance in the fireplace, I realized something important. We'd been through hell, and we might not be out of it yet, but we still had each other. And as long as we did, there was hope. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to imagine a future beyond the shadows. A future where Lily grew up knowing the truth about her grandfather, not as a soldier or a spy, but as a hero. Where Sarah and I found a way to rebuild trust, piece by fragile piece. And where, someday, we could leave the past behind for good. But until then, we'd keep fighting. For Dad. For each other. For ourselves. Because sometimes, survival isn't just about staying alive, it's about finding a reason to keep going. The days that followed were a blur of waiting and uncertainty. Agent Harris kept us updated as best he could, but progress was slow. Negotiations with the remnants of the organization dragged on, their demands growing more audacious by the hour. They wanted immunity, safe passage, access to classified intel, anything they could bargain for in exchange for Dad's release. "They're desperate," Harris told me during one of his visits. "Their network is collapsing, and they know it. But desperation makes them dangerous." I nodded, though my mind was elsewhere. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Dad sitting in that dimly lit room, his face bruised but defiant. The thought of him enduring torture, or worse, because of me gnawed at my conscience like an open wound. How could I sit here, safe and warm, while he suffered? Sarah noticed the change in me. One evening, as Lily played quietly in the corner with her dolls, she pulled me aside. "You can't blame yourself for this," she said gently, her hand resting on my arm. "Your dad made his choice. He knew the risks." "Knowing the risks doesn't make it easier," I snapped, pulling away. "He shouldn't have had to make that choice in the first place." "I know," she replied softly, her voice breaking. "But you can't let guilt consume you. Not when there's still so much to fight for." Her words struck a chord, though I wasn't ready to admit it. She was right. We couldn't afford to fall apart now. Not with Lily depending on us. Not with Dad counting on us to bring him home. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. It was late at night when Harris called, his voice urgent but tinged with cautious optimism. "We've located their secondary base, a fallback facility they're using as leverage. If we strike now, we might be able to rescue your father before they move him again." My heart raced. "When do we leave?" "First light," he replied. "But listen carefully, this isn't just about saving your dad. We need to take them down, for good. Are you prepared for that?" "Yes," I said without hesitation. For Dad. For all of us. By dawn, we were en route to the facility, a sprawling compound hidden deep within an abandoned industrial zone. The plan was simple yet perilous. Sarah, Harris, and I would infiltrate the base under cover of darkness, locate Dad, and extract him before reinforcements arrived. A team of agents would provide backup, creating diversions to draw attention away from our mission. As we approached the perimeter, nerves tightened my chest like a vice. This wasn't the first time I'd walked into danger, but it felt different now. Before, I'd been fighting for survival, for Lily's future. Now, I was fighting for something deeper: redemption, justice, closure. Inside, the air was thick with tension. Flickering fluorescent lights cast eerie shadows along the walls as we moved silently through the corridors, guided by blueprints Harris had memorized. Each step brought us closer to Dad, and further into enemy territory. Then, we heard it, faint voices echoing down the hall. We pressed ourselves against the wall, listening intently. "He's not going to break," one man said, his tone dismissive. "Not even after what we did to him." "Then we'll keep trying," another replied coldly. "He knows too much to let go." My fists clenched involuntarily. They weren't just holding him captive, they were torturing him. Anger surged through me, hot and unrelenting, but I forced myself to stay focused. Losing control now would only put everyone in greater danger. Finally, we reached the holding cells. Through a small window in the door, I saw him, Dad. His head hung low, his body slumped against the wall, but he was alive. Alive. "Cover me," I whispered to Sarah and Harris, then slipped inside. His eyes fluttered open as I knelt beside him, recognition slowly dawning on his battered face. "Mark," he rasped, his voice barely audible. "I'm here, Dad," I said, tears blurring my vision. "We are getting you out." "No," he protested weakly, shaking his head. "You shouldn't have come. It's a trap." Before I could respond, alarms blared overhead, red lights flashing as automatic locks sealed the doors. Footsteps thundered down the hallway, growing louder with each passing second. "They are onto us." Harris shouted from outside. "We don't have time." Sarah added, panic creeping into her voice. I hesitated, torn between obeying Dad's warning and saving him. Then I remembered his words to me during our last mission. Sometimes, protecting the ones you love means letting go. But I couldn't. Not this time. With Harris's help, I hoisted Dad over my shoulder and followed Sarah toward the exit. Gunfire erupted behind us, bullets ricocheting off the walls as we ran. The chaos was deafening, disorienting, but I refused to stop. Not until we were free. We burst into the frigid night air just as the backup team arrived, engaging the guards in a fierce firefight. Together, we fought our way to the extraction point, where a helicopter waited to whisk us to safety. As we climbed aboard, I cradled Dad in my arms, his breathing shallow but steady. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I allowed myself to feel a flicker of hope. We weren't out of the woods yet, not completely. The organization still existed, fragmented but dangerous. And scars, both visible and invisible, would linger long after the dust settled. But as the chopper lifted off, carrying us away from the wreckage below, I realized something important. We'd survived. Against all odds, we'd survived. And as long as we had each other, we'd find a way to heal. The helicopter ride felt surreal, like floating between two worlds. Below us, the compound smoldered in ruins, a testament to the chaos we'd left behind. Above, the sky stretched endlessly, vast and untouchable. For the first time in what felt like forever, I allowed myself to breathe, not just for survival, but for hope. Dad lay unconscious beside me, his body battered but alive. Every rise and fall of his chest was a miracle, a reminder of how close we'd come to losing him. Sarah sat across from me, her face pale but resolute, clutching Lily tightly as if afraid she might slip away too. My daughter rested her head on Sarah's shoulder, her tiny hand wrapped around mine. In that moment, despite everything we'd endured, I felt something I hadn't dared to feel in years: peace. But peace wasn't permanent. Not yet. When we landed at a secure medical facility, an unmarked building tucked deep in the mountains, doctors swarmed Dad, rushing him into surgery. Harris pulled me aside before I could follow. "This isn't over," he said, his tone grave. "The organization is fractured, but its leaders are still out there. Until they're brought to justice, None of you are truly safe. I nodded, though exhaustion weighed heavily on my shoulders. What do we do now? For now, lay low, he replied. We'll monitor the situation and keep you informed. But remember, trust no one outside this circle. Not yet. His words echoed in my mind as I watched the doctors work through a window, their movements precise and urgent. Trust no one. It was advice I'd learned the hard way, and it had saved our lives more times than I cared to count. But it had also cost us dearly. Sarah's betrayal, Dad's sacrifice, the loss of innocence for Lily and me. How much longer could we live like this? And how much more could we endure? Days turned into weeks as Dad recovered slowly but surely. The physical wounds healed, though the emotional scars ran deeper. He rarely spoke about what happened inside the compound, but sometimes, late at night, I'd catch him staring out the window, lost in thought. When I asked him about it, he simply shook his head. Some things are better left unsaid, he told me once, his voice heavy with regret. All that matters now is keeping you and Lily safe. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the one I needed to hear. Some battles weren't meant to be fought again. Some wounds weren't meant to be reopened. All we could do was move forward, together. Sarah stayed by our side throughout it all, proving herself in ways I never expected. She helped care for Dad, played with Lily, and even cooked meals when I was too overwhelmed to think straight. Slowly, tentatively, we began to rebuild the trust that had been shattered between us. It wasn't easy. There were moments of doubt, flashes of anger, but every step forward felt like a victory. One evening, as we sat around the fireplace in the cabin where we'd taken refuge, Lily curled up in my lap, yawning sleepily. "Daddy," she murmured, her voice soft and innocent, "will Mommy stay with us forever?" I glanced at Sarah, who smiled faintly, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Yes, sweetheart," I said, pulling Lily closer. "Mommy's here to stay." Her sleepy smile was enough to make the weight of everything we'd endured feel lighter, if only for a moment. Months later, life began to resemble something close to normal. We relocated to a quiet town under new identities, far from the shadows that had chased us for so long. Dad moved in with us, trading his solitary habits for family dinners and weekend hikes. He wasn't the same man he'd been before. All the secrets, sacrifices, and betrayals had changed him, but neither was I. Neither were any of us. Lily thrived in school, making friends easily and laughing with a joy that reminded me of happier times. Watching her grow filled me with pride and purpose. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I knew we'd face them together. As for Sarah, she became more than just Lily's mother or my estranged wife. She became a partner, someone I could lean on when the weight of the past threatened to pull me under. We didn't talk much about the future, about whether we'd try to rebuild what we'd lost, but for the first time in years, I allowed myself to imagine it, to hope for it. One crisp autumn morning, as golden leaves swirled in the wind, I stood with Dad on the porch, watching Lily chase butterflies in the backyard. Sarah joined us moments later, handing each of us a cup of coffee. "You know," Dad said, breaking the silence, "you've done something most people can't. You've survived. But surviving isn't living. Don't let fear hold you back anymore." His words struck a chord, resonating deep within me. Fear had guided so many of my choices. Fear of loss, fear of betrayal, fear of failure. But looking at Lily, at Sarah, at the life we were building together, I realized something important. Fear hadn't saved us. Love had. "I won't," I promised, glancing at Sarah. She smiled softly, understanding passing between us without a word. Later that day, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, I knelt beside Lily, who was busy drawing pictures in the dirt with a stick. "What are you making?" I asked, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "A house," she replied brightly, pointing to the crude outline. "With a big yard for butterflies. And a swing set. And a dog." I chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Sounds perfect." "It will be," she said matter-of-factly, her confidence unwavering. "Because we are going to live there." Her certainty brought tears to my eyes, not of sadness, but of gratitude. For the first time in years, I believed her. Believed in us. That night, as I tucked Lily into bed and kissed her goodnight, I paused in the doorway, watching her drift off to sleep. Her breathing steadied almost immediately, peaceful and content. Down the hall, Sarah waited for me, her expression soft but hopeful. "We'll get through this," she whispered, taking my hand. Together. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed her too. Years later, when Lily was old enough to ask questions about the past, I told her the truth. Not all of it, but enough to explain why we valued honesty, love, and resilience above all else. I showed her pictures of her grandfather, strong and proud, and told her stories of his bravery. Of ours. She listened intently, her bright eyes wide with wonder. So, we are safe now? Forever. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. As long as we have each other, yes. That's all that matters. And it was.